He was known as Fred the Shred as he led the Royal Bank of Scotland through acquisitions and job cuts to the brink of disaster. This evening, the knighthood he was awarded for services to banking was unceremoniously withdrawn by a previously obscure body known as the Forfeiture Committee. But whilst the mechanism of the removal was low-key, the campaign that lay behind it was anything but, as our political editor Fred Goodwin now reports.
He's now plain Mr. The banker who drove the RBS expansion that had to be rescued with £45 billion of public money has been publicly humiliated. Government sources said the committee of senior civil servants that decided Sir Fred Goodwin should lose his knighthood did so because of the strength of public opinion and anger for the way bankers contributed to the worst recession since the Second World War.
And there's a profound and unqualified apology for all of the distress that has been caused.
Sir Fred Goodwin was knighted in 2004 for services to banking. But the bank he built into one of the world's biggest could only be saved from near collapse by a massive injection of public money. Sir Fred Goodwin compounded his sins in the public eye by fighting for a time to hold on to £8 million in pension payouts.
My pension is the same as everyone else in the bank.
Losing his knighthood is the final insult for a man who used to have the ear of prime ministers and for years basked in the praise of politicians, even royalty.
Sir Fred Goodwin is another person I want to thank because we couldn't do this without, again, such a hard-working chairman.
Whitehall has torn up virtually all the rules that govern honours today. You normally have to have been struck off by a professional body. Fred Goodwin hasn't been reprimanded in that way. Or have a criminal conviction with a sentence of 3 months or more in prison. Fred Goodwin has never been charged with any offences. Robert Mugabe, Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, is the last individual to be stripped of an honour in reaction to public disapproval, rather than a breach of the rules. But the decision to strip him of his Knight's Grand Cross of the Order of the Bath came after years of campaigning and highly secret Whitehall meetings.
There is a forfeiture committee in terms of honours that exists and that will now examine this issue. I think it's right that it does so.
In Fred Goodwin's case, the consideration by a Whitehall Committee of Civil Servants was publicly advertised by the Prime Minister. The civil servants came to a decision in Whitehall terms at breakneck speed. There was no referral from the original sponsoring department, the Scottish Executive. And it all happens at a time when the government is bang in the middle of a painful row over bankers' bonuses, trying, not always successfully, to control bonuses at the now largely state-owned RBS, and sitting and waiting for the next wave of even bigger bonus announcements in other banks in the weeks to come.
Well, Gary joins us live now. Gary, how many politicians does it take to unplug a banker's knighthood?
Probably just one, and he sits in number 10. It seems highly unlikely that this was the bright idea of one of the senior civil servants who sits on the shady committee, as used to be, the Forfeiture Committee. And if it wasn't David Cameron, it was someone close to him, and David Cameron backed the idea, and that's how we got here. And there are some question marks being raised about whether that's entirely the right process. Other politicians, of course, have jumped in behind it, so it's not a huge matter of political controversy. They all want to be associated with it, because whether it was proper process or not, this is a decision that gets you close to the heart of public opinion. And on an issue like bankers' bonuses, politicians, not least David Cameron and the government, want to be seen as on your side and in touch with public opinion, not least because they know what horrors around the corner in terms of more big bonus figures coming out in the weeks to come.
The Forfeiture Committee doesn't meet very often. Is it suddenly going to be rather busy? There's a good few other banker knights, presumably, and peers even, in the pipeline.
It used to meet very rarely, sometimes just once a year, but it seems to have jumped very fast on this occasion. I just spoke to a former Labour cabinet minister. It won't surprise you to know, Gordon Brown wasn't slow on the uptake on the odd populist gesture, that they did consider, because there was a bit of a campaign back in 2009, to look at Fred Goodwin's knighthood back then. They took the view at the time that not only would it look a bit like victimisation, because there were so many knights around in the banking world, not to mention, as you say, people with all sorts of other honours, but they wouldn't know quite where to stop. And I don't think David Cameron has necessarily gamed this through. The word from Whitehall is that this is a very special example of one individual who did so much damage that you just really couldn't take any other sort of decision. But you do have to wonder if there are a few other people locking their little gongs in the safe tonight.